Hi, well, I'm Marilyn Laszlo, and this is kind of my story, this video of the years that I've been working in Papua New Guinea. Went to New Guinea in 1967 and traveled up this river in 1968. It was actually July 1968, 500 miles up the Sepik River to work among the Sepik people. This video is 13 years after I had been there. So what's exciting about this video is because you begin now to see the birth of the church. You see somebody being baptized. Dan Philgreen is the producer, and he's right here, and he can introduce himself.
Well, hi, I'm Dan, and I was thinking about the fact that Esther and I had been married 3 months when we went to the village to shoot this, and our little baby is graduating from high school this week, so it's been a while.
Was this the honeymoon trip? What a honeymoon trip!
Well, sorta. We didn't
Stone Age people
didn't have much of a honeymoon, but we got to stop in Hawaii on the way there. So that was pretty good. We drank water and ate French bread in our room, but we were on Waikiki.
Waikiki, right?
So
Yeah, well, that was the route going to New Guinea.
Back in those days. Now it's always through Hong Kong.
Well, it's changed several times.
Singapore.
It was through Hong Kong and through Sydney, Australia. Many different ways to get there. Depends.
Well, remember this whole scene here. We shot it to be supposed to be like actually an ambush and a kind of not really a battle. It was more of an ambush and a killing. And I remember trying to get the guys to pretend like we had a couple guys in the water. There was a scene where the ones they're chasing fall in the water, and they're supposed to be spearing him in the water, but they wouldn't get anywhere near him with those spears. So. Yeah,
well, it actually turned out to be kind of humorous, because they were supposed to be reenacting one of their, war days. They fought their enemies, and this is basically how they're all dressed up here that you see. Their canoes are all painted up. These are war canoes, and as you can see, several men can get into these canoes, and they can really paddle those canoes pretty fast. But it was pretty hard for them to reenact this, and it was kind of dangerous. We were trying to get them to, pretend like they're killing, but they started to giggle and laugh, and so we just made it into a celebration thing, which is the way they do celebrate, like they're coming out of but part of it is reenacting. It is reenacting their
whole
warrior
celebration
deals.
is a reenacting kind of thing. So. Yeah, this was fun. Then I remember also the rainy season was just starting, and where this whole area that we're seeing where they're doing their sing dancing and so forth was underwater at the end of the week. The water was about a foot up those pilings that you see under that house.
Right.
So it was changing pretty rapidly. It's a good thing we shot this one at the beginning of the week. There wouldn't have been any place to do it.
Right. Well, it was fun. Before Dan and Esther actually got to the village, I sat down with the leaders of all the clans, the 4 clans, and wanted to know, okay, if we're going to be showing this to people in the United States and maybe to other countries, I worked with Wycliffe Bible translators. I said, what do you want to show people in my country, what you're like, and what would you like them to see? So it was really interesting that they actually planned this whole video. They said, okay, we want them to see about how we used to fight, and they want to, introduce all these things. So as you watch this video, it's their reenactment of what they want you to know about them, which I thought was pretty neat.
And this, the Mountain of Light video, the first one that had been done that they had seen, that was purely documentary. They didn't really know what a camera was at that point, did they?
Exactly.
They didn't know what was going on. But by this time, they'd seen Mountain of Light and some other movies that you showed them. So they kind of had an idea about
how this is done,
what a movie was. And I remember you showed them.
I showed them Peace Child.
Peace Child, yeah.
Oh, and they made fun. Peace Child, they're only right across the border, where actually Don Richardson worked, and he's a good friend. And they looked at Peace Child, and they said, well, we could do all of this a whole lot better than those people. So it was really kind of a motivating thing to get them to really reenact. And
I remember Esther and I had not seen the Peace Child movie, and you still had the projector there and had the movie. So one night the week when we were shooting this film, come by here, you hauled out the projector in the film, and we watched it in the big house. But about there was about 30 of the men came in, and it was kind of an event, and we watched it. So here we're watching this, this moving, emotional story, the Peace Child movie,
Right.
and we got 30 Hauna guys rolling in laughter on the
they
floor.
were.
They
They
just
were.
laughed, and I thought it was so funny.
Well, they decided that they didn't know how to make their canoes right. They didn't know how to paddle right, and I thought this is a riot. It was funny. So it motivated them to really perform their very best. So that
What they did, I remember coming into the village from the airstrip in the canoes. You had me. You said, "Get your camera ready." I literally started rolling the camera in the canoe on the way into the village. They were reenacting stuff as we came.
Oh, they
up
were
the
ready
river.
for the
there's,
camera, and I had never even met Dan, really, and so.
In fact, some of the, maybe not these shots here, but there's the shots of the fishing and the. I think we saw them a little while back, but
Yeah.
those actually I shot coming into the village before I even met anybody or said hello.
No, so they knew what a camera was by then, and well, the interesting thing is when I first got there, just to give you the perspectives here, they had never seen themselves, and so when my partner Judy and I nailed a mirror on one of the posts in the house, they would come in and look at themselves, and they didn't know it was them. And they would try to, every time they moved, whoever was in the mirror moved. And so finally somebody said, "Hey, that's you." And they said, "That's me." And it's the first time they'd ever seen themselves. And, when I found the word for picture, it's actually reflection. They could see themselves in the reflection in the water. But see, it wasn't very detailed because they're black waters. So the word for picture is actually their shadow and their reflection. And so that's the level that what we started. I mean, they had never seen anything other than what they see in the jungle.
I remember even in '81, I don't think anybody had learned any English at that point.
Oh, no,
But
nobody
now a
knew
lot of the
English.
guys speak English.
Well, it's
so-
become a national language because of
but,
Australia's influence.
In '81, nobody spoke English, and it was I had been to like down to Tijuana and into Canada, but this is the first time I'd been out of the country. Well,
This was your
my
first video.
really international trip.
Yeah.
And it was my first time being with a whole bunch of people, and we had no common language, but we sure made friends, though. That was a
Oh no,
that was a fun
the
week.
people they really got into it. But I think, Dan, this was you'd only been married 3 months. I can't remember. You slept on a mosquito net in a house that had rats and
Well, I remember one night
lizards
it
and
wasn't in
snakes in the
one of the other villages we were in down by the coast. I forget the name of it, but we slept in a this translator hadn't been gone, and we came back to their after like a year being gone to their village house that had been laying empty. There was no screens, there were no windows, mosquitoes, and we were like slathered in insect repellent, two newlyweds laying in bed together going, don't touch me, I'm so hot. Oh.
No,
It was
the
miserable.
temperature ranges 85 to 120 degrees year round, and the humidity is 100%.
And the mosquitoes are about 1,000%. So.
There's no way it's just clouds of mosquitoes. It's 24 hours a day you have mosquitoes. So once you get immune to the itch, you don't like the mosquitoes, but at least you get immune and you're not scratching. You're not scratching. So that was a pretty hard introduction to your bride.
But we did enjoy the trip. It really
the people
was
are fun.
Great, yeah. We didn't eat much of this stuff, though.
This is their main staple, sago paste. Comes from the sago palm tree.
I said it tasted, if the Jell-O company had a flavor that was wallpaper paste, that would be sago.
Well, it's not so much the taste, it's the smell. I mean, it's the smell. If you can hold your nose and eat it. But that's their main staple. Jesus is the sago paste of life. When I introduced bread, I said, well, Jesus is the bread of life. But when I introduced bread, they threw up. So I really wasn't translating this word right. You have to match the original Greek, which means the main staple. So you have to use that generic word, which means the main staple. And this is how they drank. They didn't know how to drink out of cups. They'd never had cups, so this is how they drink water. So when I was trying to give them medicine, it was very, very difficult because they didn't know how to swallow the medicine by drinking out of a glass.
I remember doing this scene. This was one of the few times we used lights. I had a couple little photo floodlights, and we had to run an extension cord to the generator.
I remember that.
For this.
We had a
didn't
small
do very many
generator.
scenes like this where we had to do lights, but
Yeah, because their houses are pretty dark. Now, these are the medicine men. The word for medicine man is Ingamhisugi, which really means the man who spits. So he's spitting and blowing and calling on the spirits to determine what spirit has caused that sickness. Well, these are the early days. You know, we had to develop an alphabet and going through the village and trying to gather words and figure out how many sounds they have in their language. The kids loved it. At first, they were very afraid of our white skin. When I first got there in 1968, people, no white-skinned person had ever lived among them, so they were afraid of our white skin. But then the kids realized that we weren't going to harm them.
Remember, this was, we were using the camera that was Dave Colvin's camera, and he's the guy that shot the Mountain of Light movie, and then he had died suddenly of a heart attack, as I recall, and his widow, Harriet, loaned us the camera to do this movie.
Right.
But that was back when it was 16 millimeter film, and the camera actually had a, in fact, I still have it. It's in my office. It's got kind of, years later, we gave it back to her, and then years later, she gave it to Claude Bowen, who gave it to me. And it had gotten damaged in the meantime. But anyway, it had a spring-wound motor. Didn't have any batteries, and you'd crank up the spring, and then it would shoot for a minute or so, and then you have to stop and crank up spring. So there aren't any really long scenes in this movie.
No, that's right.
Because I would run out of spring.
Right. Yeah, that was what it was like back in those days.
So if you would watch the next movie, Return to Hound movie, that was all shot with video. So the whole look is very, very different between the...
All three, very different look, yeah. Well, it covers the whole story. Starts with Mountain of Light, and when they were still Stone Age people, didn't know what a camera was. So we shot, some pretty original scenes that are pretty shocking.
But it's interesting, like somebody might watch one of these movies, especially the Mountain of Light movie, and there's things like nudity and things like that that's part of just their culture. And to us over here, like, oh, it's so shocking. But it's amazing how quickly you become
adjusted
part
to
of the culture,
well,
and
because
it doesn't seem strange.
Well, yeah, because they don't have a problem here. Who has the problem?
Yeah, it's
we're the ones that we're the ones that have the problem. They don't have any problem whatsoever, and we're very careful of things that we introduce. If we move very slowly. It needs to evolve. We don't really focus on clothes or anything like that. We at this stage, we're still establishing our rapport for these people to understand just what we're really up to.
No, this is pretty amazing, being able to get an airplane in there. And actually it was, this is at this particular shot. Oh, this is coming over the village. This is the story about the throwing out the letters. Where are you going to see this here? Which they wanted to, this is the story they wanted to have. This is a story,
they couldn't understand, why they had to know how to read and write. Because they've been watching the two of us, missionaries, and we knew how to read and write very fluently. They could see that. But we still didn't know how to paddle canoe ride. We didn't know how to, weave a basket. We didn't know how to prepare their food. We didn't know how to light a fire without a whole lot of paper matches. So reading and writing wasn't helping us with anything. So I had to try to motivate them. So I wrote a letter in their language while I was at our mission station and had our pilot just throw them out. Well, nobody could read it. And I said, well, you mean I'm the only one in this whole tribe that knows how to read your language? And I said, so I read the letter, and I said, I'm here at our mission station. If you want me to bring something back, like a steel axe and a shovel or something, let me know. Well, it kind of broke through the barrier there. The other thing that I think motivated them to learn how to read and write is I realized that they were being exploited by the crocodile traders because they didn't know how to read and write. They didn't know what the value of a crocodile skin was. And so that it came around.
And then actually it was years later that you actually the village was able to build an airstrip just real close to the village. So but back at this time, when that story happened, and then actually when we were shooting this film, there was not a way to get an airplane in anywhere. Really
absolutely.
Close.
The shortest, the nearest airstrip for us to get out of the area was 100 and some miles downriver by dugout canoe. We do have an airstrip closer to the village, which is about 4.5 miles, and it's on the main river, but it does flood, several months out of the year because we're in swamp. It's pretty hard to find real high ground to make an airstrip.
So now, once all this handwritten translation,
We did.
That's so. That
No.
scared me to death to see that all
No,
handwritten
I
there in
know.
a pile like that.
We went through the New Testament 7 times, but the first time we went all the way through the New Testament with these men was handwritten. First 2 times was handwritten.
Like, how could you sleep at night thinking?
I'm
We're
wondering
out
how
here
long.
in the rain,
Oh,
and
I
there's
know.
fire. Oh, well, anything could happen to those
No,
people.
that's we have stories like that where there's
People
been a
lost
fire,
all that work. Yeah.
right? See, back then we didn't have computers. In fact, typewriters didn't even work right because the high humidity, the ribbons wouldn't work right, and so that's why we started handwriting it. But I'm telling you, verse by verse, handwritten. That's how they learned how to write. And the first people in the village that were working with me were the first readers, first writers, first teachers, first everything. Then they started to teach others.
And we had 24 volunteers and some
Oh, these men. I was trying to figure out how to reach the older men because they felt they were too old to learn all of this, and so we made them like the judges. And we said, well, you come every day and listen to the few verses that we were translating every day and see if it's making sense and not using baby talk. Well, they became so involved and so excited about Jesus especially and his healing powers. Because these are all medicine men, and there are a lot of things that these medicine men just couldn't do, no matter how many times they called upon the spirits that they thought caused this illness. They could not heal, but Jesus could heal the blind, could heal the crippled people, could heal deaf and mute, and we have blind people, we have deaf and mute, and we have crippled people, and with all of their satanic power, they could not heal any of those in those areas. And Jesus could.
It's amazing that those are stories that made it into our canon. Those types of miracles.
Right, those miracles.
Danny and Tom said, Jesus.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, what I mentioned, our word for doctor is ingam hoisugi, which means the man who spits. Then they realized that Jesus also spit. He spit on the blind man's
Which
eyes.
I always thought, what a disgusting story.
Yeah, that's
Why
right.
is that in the Bible?
Exactly. And I haven't found any other tribal group that our people are working on that have that same
It's
word
almost
for
like
medicine.
that whole passage was like just for them.
And those men came every night. I don't know how many years to hear more about Jesus and how he healed. And every one of those men there became a Christian.
It's really amazing.
These men played an important
We have a lot of eye problems, as you notice that older man there.
in the translation.
But you hardly ever see eye problems anymore.
The word for forgiveness.
Just a little bit of the medical help that
The dedication of a
we were able to give these people. You know, many people died of malaria, cerebral malaria. You have about 6 hours before you go into a coma.
the house and they had joined hands. And as Joel was praying,
Now this is the big house that
This is my second house. I was determined I was going to build a bigger house so we could get more people in and actually do entertaining. It's a village house. It had a thatch roof roof, but we're dedicating the house here.
and in the movie the whole story, you tell the whole story about the significance of
Putting their arms around
the
each other,
shoulder and
right?
how that was a big breakthrough.
people put their arms around
So many I mean, it seems like in every people group I hear about, and Don Richardson has a whole book
Yes,
about
he
the
does.
cross-cultural keys, eternity in their hearts.
Eternity in their hearts should be required reading for every Christian because God has prepared every one of these people for his word. Everybody's
And this is a-
prepared.
Just a
That's an
prime,
indication,
prime
right there.
example.
I mean, how can we go into these areas? They didn't even know the language could be written, and we're coming in with a whole new theory about how the world was created and all of this, and yet no one has ever doubted that creation story in the Bible. They've always wondered, did we really come from a crocodile? Did we really come from a python? And so these people are no different than people walking around the streets out here. They're just wondering, where did it all begin? How did we get
I
here?
remember there was pretty much the whole village is involved in church now, isn't it?
Oh, over
There's-
500 are coming to school, all ages. There's about 800 in the village.
So now it seems like you kind of are kind of an outsider if you're not involved in the church. And
Exactly
what you
right.
mean. I mean, I'm sure there's still some, right? They're hardcore.
There's
just stay
very
away.
few that are not involved some way in the whole program.
one of the teachers and
Right.
also the chief's youngest son.
I like this in Return to Hana. We use this same shot of Danny preaching.
Well, he's the chief's youngest son.
And then we have him preaching. How many years later? Between 81 and. Oh, I should know this.
81.
But it was a lot of years, and he had some gray hair.
Oh yeah, right.
But it's the same pulpit, same Danny,
exactly.
preaching the word.
Well, they're still, even today, after all these years, they're still the main leaders in the village. They've been very, very faithful.
Now, are there some younger guys that are coming up as spiritual leaders,
we
pastors, and so forth?
Yeah, we have trained 25 pastors, 57 teachers. They may even be more now because they're pretty much running their own program. But in Wycliffe, we really believe in training, so that they're doing it rather than we're doing it, and we work our way out of a job. And we hand the whole program over to them. This was pretty exciting. This was a first baptism. And I spoke at Taylor University, and they gave us some T-shirts, and here this guy has a Taylor. And when I showed this to Taylor, I mean, they just went wild. Now you're going to meet this old man who was one of the very first that really befriended me. Oldest man in the village, Nokian. Very powerful medicine man, and he was the very first of all the medicine men to ask Jesus into his life.
He started to ask me some very difficult questions, and he said to me, "Marilyn, look at me."
So how old was he at this point? Did
you know, we're just guessing. Look at him.
Idea,
Nobody lives to lose their hair, very long. Nobody lives to have gray hair. He's one of those survivor of the fittest. You'll see a few with gray hair, but the life expectancy is about 30 to 35 years of age. But he was one of those.
What would it be today?
Today it's now 50 to 55, and that's the national average. But it's gone up 20-some years.
That's amazing.
Just with a little bit of help. But he was a very dear man. I really love the older people. They were sweet people.
Did you know that? And I said, yes, I've read books.
I remember, I still have vivid memories of shooting this shot.
I know. It's a very touching.
Such a powerful story.
It is a very touching shot.
I was so moved by the story. Even you told me the story, then we went out and shot it, and I just thought, wow,
it's this scene right here. Every time I went to do a meeting at a church, everybody thought I was really tall because they saw me next to this man, and I'm taller than he is. So everybody was expecting me to be about 6 feet tall, and I'm 5'2" because these people are very short.
That's funny. Now this guy was
he's from another village, actually a mountain village.
And it's amazing. Just being there a week, I could tell he's from somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Marilyn, do you remember when we were coming out of the village after we'd been in there for a week? The water had come up when we couldn't get out in the airplane. We had to go down river to Ambunti, the 110 miles in the canoes.
Yeah, long trip.
And I remember we got up early in the morning, and everybody's kind of quiet, riding along here. And then after a while, we were in a couple of bigger canoes. There were several fellas riding in the front of the one we were in. And they started talking and
telling stories,
had a big conversation. And you started laughing. And then I was behind you, and Esther was behind me. You leaned over your shoulder and said, "Hey, Dan, the guys want to know how much you paid for Esther."
Right.
They knew we were new.
Because they have to buy their brides.
And so I had a couple of motorcycles when I was in school that I sold to buy Esther's diamond ring. And so I just said, well, tell them I paid 2 motorcycles. And so then you said that. And then there was another big conversation.
Oh, yeah, 2 motorcycles. And, of course, they were really impressed with motorcycles. And to think that you sold 2 motorcycles to buy your bride. And, of course, that makes Esther really, really very special. But this is one of the most incredible stories that these people came down to our village, heard that we had medicine, and then asked us to come to their village and see if we could talk somebody to coming to their village and carve Papa God's talk on the banana leaf like the white man's talk.
And so they built the church.
They built the church, and they said, well, they saw the church in our village, and so the leader that came, it took him, it took 4 days, I think, to travel to our village to get some medical help. And they saw the church and all these people coming to church and singing. So the leader said, well, if we just build a church, then Papa God could see that we're ready. Mm-hmm. We're ready for somebody to come. That's the guy. That's the leader there.
It's like talking about 3 or 4 days in canoes, and we ran over there in the helicopter in what about 10 or 15
well,
minutes?
no, it was like 5 minutes.
It's
it's right straight
it's
across
so
the
close
swamp.
by helicopter.
Yeah, right.
So the helicopter really was an
Well,
amazing
see what
tool over there.
most people don't know about this video. It ends here, but two missionary teams, translation teams from Wycliffe went in there, and their Bible is now printed and published. And there's a church there. There's a body of believers. But see, the video ends where nobody has come yet.
Because that hadn't happened.
It hadn't happened yet, and
So,
so
do you think that this have anything to do with that? The movie?
this village, once this video got published and people all over the country saw this video, that this village was prayed for there probably more than any village in the world. And you knew, somebody was going to go in there.
Video's over, Marilyn.
Oh, Dan, this has been really exciting, reminiscing about how we put this whole video together.
We hope you all enjoyed it at home.
We sure do. Hope you enjoyed it.
Bye-bye.